Welcome back, everybody, to Game On, where we use sports and athletics to discuss everything related to mental health. You can notice our fancy new background here. Anyway, after many, many years, my hometown Chicago Bears have agreed to be on this show, HBO Max. It's called Hard Knocks. If you're not a sports fan, they pick one NFL team and they follow them through their training camp, preseason games up until the season starts. And for those who are familiar with what's going on in the NFL, the Bears have exciting new quarterback, number one pick, Caleb Williams. Of course, I'm personally excited. Every team's excited at this point. I've never watched the show before. So first time I watched the first episode just last week, and Coach Matt Eberflus sat down in this episode for a couple minutes with Coach Nick Saban. Hopefully most of you are familiar. He's a Hall of Fame coach, coached in the NFL for a little bit, and then mostly coached in college, won multiple championships. Really stud of a coach. I had four takeaways. So this one's going to be a drop longer. We'll break it up. Four main takeaways in just that brief conversation from all his years of experience of working with young men, young athletes, and that I think are very relevant to everyday life. Number one, he mentions how he always liked to stand and practice stand behind the quarterback. I said, I want to see what they're seeing. And to me, that means like I want to be able to get their perspective. That is an underrated skill. Obviously, he's applying it to sports. It's an underrated skill for all of us to be able to stop for a moment, put ourselves aside, and be able to get the other person's perspective. Obviously, it's my job and my profession. But in any type of relationship, whether it's a working relationship, a friend relationship, a romantic relationship, a parent-child relationship, it's important to be able to see the other person's perspective, see how they are experiencing things, how they are seeing things. That doesn't mean we agree with their conclusion or how they're acting, but we have to be able to appreciate just where they're coming from, even if ultimately we disagree, but we have to navigate that. If we can never see the other person's perspective, we are never going to get anywhere. And obviously in sports, if you want to be able to help your quarterback develop, you have to be able to appreciate where they're coming from. That's number one. Number two is that Coach Saban said that he rarely, if ever, if he had something negative to say, and you need to be able to say something negative, you need to be able to give criticism to your quarterback, to your number one pick in the draft. He didn't do it in front of everybody. What's the point? We have to stop and think, what is the function of what I'm about to do? Is it going to be helpful or unhelpful? Is it going to be productive or unproductive? Is there a purpose of me trashing and being super negative on what he did in front of everybody? So you tell me, maybe sometimes there is a purpose. But if your goal is to try to help them develop, don't hold back on the negative feedback that you need to give. But why go ahead and do it in front of everybody, shame them? What's the point? Maybe it's simple, maybe it's a no-brainer for all of you. That applies to an employee, a coworker, your child. What's the point of doing it in front of the rest of your kids? If you sincerely care and want them to grow, you can go over to them individually and you can be negative and sort of help them move forward. It doesn't have to be in front of everybody. That's number two. Number three, he always found it more helpful to show rather than to tell with his young quarterbacks. And I'm sure I've been guilty of this many times. We can fall into the preaching and the professor mode of talking and talking and talking and saying, certainly we don't want to do as I say and not as I do. That's horrible. And yeah, I think it's a major transgression to say that and say, oh, back in my day, and that stuff is certainly not helpful. Our kids are watching, our employees are watching, our coworkers are watching, our friends are watching, everybody's watching. These days, everything's being recorded. If we could walk around and appreciate that we're always being watched, whether we like it or not, then we can appreciate that people take so much more from what's being modeled what they're seeing. You can preach and you can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, but if your behavior does not match up to that, that's just your words are gonna be meaningless. You have to back it up. But also, like, how do people learn? How do people take in information and then go ahead and do it? Appreciating who you're talking to. First of all, people learn differently, and at different developmental age, you can use words. They might not appreciate and understand the words that you're saying. So taking the time. Let's say you're teaching your kid how to tie his shoes or her shoes. So you could say the instructions a million times. They could probably get it 10 times faster if you show with them. You're also, when you're showing, you are joining with them. You're there with them. You're not just sitting over here and saying, oh, do this, da 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 da. You were with them, you were joining with them, and you're visually showing them. I thought that was, again, maybe simple, but profound. Last but not least, he made the point to highlight that it's not just about the quarterback. And he's like, one of the biggest mistakes that quarterbacks make is their leadership style. A quarterback is limited to how good they can be depending on their supporting cast. So they need to have a good team around them. They need to have a good offensive line, running back, defense. What kind of leader are they going to be? And he said a lot of young quarterbacks fall into being what he called a transactional leader versus being a transformational leader. This is going to apply to us in a second. You'll hear in a second. Transactional is just like, okay, bottom line. Did this happen? Did we score? Great. Did you make the catch? Great. Did you make the tackle? Great. If you didn't, that stunk. Fail. Success, fail. Success, fail. That doesn't work consistently. That's not going to ultimately raise your team as a leader and bring them forward. You have to highlight the little pieces of progress. Transactional, in my mind, I think of goals versus values. I think we've talked about that before. What is your overall value as a leader and as a team member? How do you want to bring us forward? And if your teammates are working on that, then you highlight the positive, you provide the constructive feedback. But if it's all or nothing, if it's just about the bottom line, you either made the tackle or you didn't, you either made the catch or you didn't, we scored or we didn't, then it's going to be a very frustrating ride for everybody. And it's not going to be pleasant to be around. So as a leader, you want to create and develop and foster transformation versus just transaction. And that applies to us as parents. We're all a work in development. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what you think. And if you don't think you're a work in development, honestly, you're lying to yourself. So get over yourself and realize that we're all a work in development. We're all flawed. We're all fallible. Certainly our kids are trying to figure things out, trying to figure out who they are. It's about transformational versus transactional. Whether it's at your job, whether you're a CEO or a boss or a supervisor, or even just a coworker, whether it's a friend, what kind of friend is just dependent on transaction? Either you do this for me or you don't. That's not what a real friend is. Developing that transformational type of attitude helps us be better leaders in our own lives too. So I really appreciate these little mini lessons that were jam-packed into literally just like 2 minutes of the episode, and look forward to more episodes. If anyone does have connections with Coach Eberflus, Eberflus, I think it's Eberflus, and Coach Saban, I would love to pick their brains. Clearly, that's a hope. And I hope you got something out of this. Please like and share with your friends, etc. Have a wonderful rest of your day.